Welcome into Behind the Plate with Maren and Nate. I'm Nate Rohr, the play-by-play voice of Nebraska softball. I'm here with Maren Angus Combs, the Hale varsity writer for softball, and we're talking Nebraska softball. The Huskers go out to Maryland, win 2 out of 3 games over the Terrapins, and really a big series for the Cornhuskers in terms of making sure their season continues on a path toward regionals. We're also going to look ahead to Nebraska's next series against an Indiana team that saw a 23-game winning streak end this week. Shonda Stanton, their head coach, chats with us here later on. And of course, we'll check out our Big Ten power rankings and another week of shuffling and some preconceived notions rejected and some ideas that we might have had disproved. But let's start with Nebraska. And you know, we were on this podcast, I think, pretty critical of the Huskers against Michigan because it felt like they gave away an opportunity against the Wolverines. You had the home series against Michigan, and some mental mistakes really led to that loss on Sunday and allowed Michigan to defeat you on your home field. So you didn't know what you were going to get from the Huskers this week. The Nebraska pitching staff was remarkable this weekend. Sarah Harness and Courtney Wallace were both razor sharp. They only allowed 2 runs to a pretty good Maryland team, and the Huskers win 2 out of 3. And it changes your whole idea of where the season was going, at least in my opinion. There were some bracketology articles that had Nebraska out of regionals. After this weekend, I see them back on the path toward regionals.
Yeah, definitely. I think our biggest question mark was the pitching, and could it come back strong? Could it have a good weekend? And Courtney Wallace, she's tied her career high in wins with 17, and Sarah Harness really did a great job over the weekend. And like you said, only 2 runs allowed to Maryland, who's been ranked through a good chunk of this season. They've struggled as of late, but overall, it was a great performance from Nebraska on the road. And I don't see how they're not back in tournament talks. Honestly, I never saw them out.
I would agree with that.
But, you know, that's our opinion, and bracketology is opinion based.
Right. And you have a month to go. Yeah. So that mark can move a little bit. The RPI rankings were updated at the beginning of this week. Nebraska was sitting 40th. In my mind, 40th is kind of the beginning of the bubble, which means you're in. You can play yourself out, but you're in as things sit right now. But it was really important in my eyes for Nebraska to go out and win a couple of games at Maryland, because first off, I think Maryland's a part of that mix, a part of this big middle class in the Big Ten Conference. We always joke when we come in here, and we're trying to comprise our Big Ten power rankings. Okay, Northwestern's 1 because of their big winning streak. Indiana is 2. Michigan State, we slot every week at 14. After that, you know, and there are a couple of teams that we tag out toward the bottom, but, you know, 3 through 10, this league is very even, very close. And you feel like anytime you can go out and win a series against that middle class period, but especially take 2 of 3 in their ballpark, that's huge for you as you build your resume.
Yeah, and Nebraska at 40, they're going to play an Indiana team this weekend who's 30 in the RPI, and that's an opportunity for the Huskers to move up a couple points, take advantage of Indiana's series loss to Minnesota, and build on that momentum that you just had at Maryland and try to flip the script, because the higher Nebraska can get, I mean, there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 teams in the conference ahead of them right now on RPI. Yeah. So they're going to need to move up a couple spots to secure a spot, and you're better safe than wondering at the end of the season, are we first in or first out?
Absolutely. And it should be noted that I think Nebraska has a great opportunity in these next 2 weeks. You mentioned Indiana sitting at 30th in the RPI. So if you're able to go out to Indiana and win 2 of 3, you're going up a little bit. You have Wisconsin at home the week after that. They're sitting 34th in the RPI. Again, an opportunity to boost yourself to where even if you don't quite get over them in the RPI rankings, if it comes down to those two teams, the committee will go, okay, the RPI is close. They're in the same conference. Did they play? They look at the series. They go, okay, toward the end of the year, 3 weeks to go, a month to go, they played. Nebraska won 2 out of 3. We're taking the Huskers. And so it's that chance to prove that you deserve something over them. And for Nebraska, they have done what I think every team wants to do, which is be in control of their own fate late in the season. Now, it's not going to be easy. I mean, Indiana is good. Wisconsin is good. Then they go Northwestern and Ohio State. And Ohio State's a part of that big middle class of the Big Ten Conference. But, all Nebraska needs to do is win. It is simple. It is not easy. They're going to have to play well. They're going to have to be sharp. But if they just win more than they lose down the stretch, they come into this week 13 games to go in the regular season. In my eyes, if they win 7, they're in regionals. So whatever combination of 7 you get out of the next 13 gets you into regionals in my eyes.
From here on out, with the exception of the midweek against Creighton, every team that Nebraska plays is ranked ahead of them in RPI.
Yep.
You said it. They're in the driver's seat. They hold the key to their own destiny right now.
Absolutely. And one thing that makes you feel good about where Nebraska might go is the way Sarah Harness pitched for the Huskers. Friday night, 3 shutout innings, 4 hits, 3 strikeouts. I feel like Nebraska was a little, I'm not going to say quick with their hook, but their lean was early. Rhonda Revelle told me after the game that the plan was always one pitcher was going to get 4 innings, either Wallace or Harness. One was going to get 3. And it was just where that break happened. And so they got 3 good innings out of Harness, decided to lift her. Wallace came in, pitched well, and finished off the win on Friday night. It felt to me on Sunday like they kind of let Harness off the leash a little bit.
Yeah.
And just say, okay, you go and you do the best you can for as long as you can. And she turns in 5 shutout, 1 hit innings. She walks 3. And so it feels like Sarah's getting her legs back under her after a rough about 6-week stretch. So that's a huge thing for this team moving forward.
Yeah. And to leave her in, give her the extra slack, right? I mean, they need Harness because we talk about it every week. And I feel like I sound like a broken record at times, just saying Courtney Wallace can't do it alone.
Right.
So to see Harness come in and give 5 solid innings is it'll do wonders for this staff,
especially against a lineup that's seen you. It's one thing to be the secret weapon and pop in there, and on Saturday you're a little different look than Courtney, but they saw her on Friday night, and I think the way the Husker staff used Harness this week, I didn't want to use the word quick hook on Friday because that she needed an outing, I think, to rebuild confidence.
Yeah.
She needed an outing where she left the game feeling like she pitched pretty well.
Yeah.
Well, Friday night was that. And then they give her the ball back on Sunday, and she goes out and throws very well against a Maryland team that wanted that game very badly. We mentioned Courtney Wallace, and she just keeps going out there and fighting for this team. You look at her, and we've said it, she's not a pitcher coming off the bus, but she's somebody who competes like crazy, somebody who stays in there and fights. She got in a jam on Friday night, got out of it without giving up a run, pitched well enough to win on Saturday. She loses the game, but you'll take what you got out of her on Saturday. And then, of course, Sunday comes in and throws the last 2 innings. So, Courtney Wallace being solid, I think, has allowed Harness to step up. And if Harness can be solid, then this team can do what we said they need to do now in the stretch.
once you get into postseason play, these teams are no longer going to see your pitcher every single game.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what's happening right now with Nebraska, right? Everyone is going to see Courtney Wallace, right? At least twice.
Mm-hmm.
And at this rate, 3 times. Same thing, Harness, right? She's going to be seen twice, sometimes maybe in all 3 games. So by the time they get to postseason, that doesn't matter anymore.
Sure. They get one look at you.
You get one look.
Generally, and
Yeah.
maybe 2.
Yeah.
But yeah, you only get one shot at them. Let's talk a little bit about the Husker offense. And of course, on Friday night, another Brookie blast. Trademark. Anybody else uses it, I'm suing you for everything you have. Also, the good folks at the Maryland SID staff kind of crawled under my skin a little bit.
Oh no.
In the post-game release, they called it a lucky 2-run home run. Maren, you coach softball, you've followed softball. How many lucky 2-run home runs clear the scoreboard to the opposite field?
That's not lucky. That's strength.
Uh-huh. Yep. That's kind of what I thought too.
You know what? Maybe if Brooke was a slapper who, hit a bunch of, infield singles
Mm-hmm.
and then suddenly got a hold of one and sent it over the scoreboard, I'd be like,
maybe there's something there.
Maybe something, but no, that was her 10th home run of the year. That's not lucky.
No, I know I was a little appalled. Let's put it that way, at that home run being termed lucky, especially the way she's swinging the bat. I really, it was kind of a slap in the face toward Brooke and toward this team, and I think the Huskers took notice. And then on Sunday, and I was so encouraged by the fact that Nebraska finally seemed to address the issue that they have had all year, which is handling the changeup. And this is a Maryland team that has great changeup pitchers. Courtney Weich throws a 72-mile-an-hour fastball, but has a terrific changeup. Trinity Schlotterbeck locked down the Huskers with a fastball changeup mix. And then the great closer for Maryland, Kira Booker. That's what she has. She is that's her one trick right now. I'm sure she's working to build a pitching repertoire, but her changeup is a Bugs Bunny changeup where you can literally swing and miss at it 3 times as it comes in from her hand to the plate.
Spin yourself around into the ground.
And Nebraska was corkscrewing themselves into the ground against it on Saturday. And it was a real focus for this team to hit the changeup on Sunday, adjust to the changeup. And they did that. They got 3 good swings on Booker. In the 4th inning, the definitive 2-run triple by Bredwell that more or less put the game away. Even the 2 outs Nebraska got, they were rockets. So I think that's the biggest encouraging sign moving forward for Nebraska is it looks like they can adjust to the changeup because they faced good changeup pitchers, and at least on Sunday, they were able to deal with it.
Yeah, and something that I've noticed with the Nebraska hitters when it comes to a changeup is that they're swinging, right? And we're taught, and I teach my kids, right? We're not swinging at changeups unless you have 2 strikes on you,
right?
Unless you go up to the plate looking change, and you're sitting for that off-speed pitch, you're most likely not going to hit it.
Yeah,
and that kind of had been the trend that Nebraska was on when it came to off-speed pitchers, and yeah, you said it, and Booker. That changeup it just floats.
Yeah, it's a little, it's like a soap bubble. I mean, honestly, I don't know if I've seen a Division I pitcher, let alone a major conference pitcher, throw a pitch with regularity that slow. She was able to locate it like crazy.
Yeah,
but a pitch that slow.
I don't think we've seen anything like that lately. I'm going to throw out the GOAT, Lisa Fernandez, because she had a fantastic changeup back in the day. But Of course, I mean, for some people listening to our podcast, they weren't alive to watch Lisa Fernandez play, and they just know her as a coach at UCLA.
Yeah, I never saw her pitch. I of course know the name. I would be lying if I said I was as tuned into softball during her career as I am now. But at the same time, yeah, that's a name I know, but I didn't see her pitch. But the point is,
Yeah.
That changeup can be such a weapon, and it really had been against Nebraska to this point. And they were able to settle in. They were able to deal with it. And first off, that says that, we talked about it, that Nebraska had put on tape struggles against the changeup. They had shown that they were having difficulty with the changeup. I mean, Lauren Durkowski had a very good one for Michigan and really tied the Huskers up in knots the couple weeks ago. So you get that. And then, of course, Maryland sits there and goes, okay, well, you couldn't deal with that one, and we'll see if you can deal with ours. And Nebraska really couldn't the first 2 games of the series, but they honed in on it. They locked in on the changeup. They were able to deal with it. And so now that has a chilling effect on the rest of their opponents, saying to them, "Are you really sure you want to throw that changeup up there, because they can deal with it and they can adjust to it."
Yeah, you're right. Teams are gonna now have to adjust their plan of attack, right?
Mm-hmm.
They're gonna say, "Hey, Nebraska's having a hard time with the changeup. Let's attack." And now they'll say, "Oh, you know what? Now they're coming around.
Yeah,
they can see it. We're gonna have to adjust." So it'll be interesting to see how the rest of the season plays out with some of the pitchers they face and how they go at Nebraska.
right.
Is it more up and down, in and out?
Yeah.
I don't know.
I mean,
We'll see.
teams won't necessarily totally abandon the
No,
changeup. Let's be
you can't.
clear. Is
You
that
can't.
no? If that's something you do, the Huskers are going to see it. But I do think that it gives you a little hope and a little confidence that, hey, even if they face a pitcher with that in their arsenal, they can deal with it. They can handle it. You're hopeful that they can make that adjustment quicker next time, but at least they've shown they can eventually adjust to it. That's a good start.
Yeah, the off-speed pitch it's an interesting thing because you look at some of the great pitchers in the game. Okay, let's look at Montana Fouts, for example. Okay, Montana throws 70 miles an hour plus.
Yep.
Okay, not a great off-speed pitch. And you can be dominant your freshman year, maybe your sophomore year, throwing 70 miles an hour because that, I mean,
sure, it's heat.
It's heat. No, you don't see that often. You're not going to see 70 often. But by the time you're a junior, well, now they've seen you enough times. There's enough tape. There's enough preparation for that 70 mile an hour not to be so dominant. Well, what does a pitcher have to do? They have to develop an off-speed pitch.
Right.
Montana's been working on that. Still not perfected. But when you look at pitchers like that bring that kind of heat, if they don't have that off-speed pitch, their dominance starts to fall off the table the older they get.
And at some point they catch up with you. At some point they know it's coming. The hitters quicken their timing. They work all week on fastballs, knowing that they can sit on your heat. And I mean, Division I hitters can handle 70 eventually. Eventually. It's not like absolutely every one of them can, but the better hitters, especially the ones you see all the time in Southeastern Conference play, they can get up there. And they have. One more thing on the changeup and one of the purveyors of it, Kira Booker. Did you notice her face paint? Because I sure didn't until game 3, and a friend of mine texted me while I was broadcasting that game, and I noticed right off Kira Booker's hair. Kira Booker, the pitcher for Maryland, has black hair that has bright pink dye. It's part of it is dyed bright pink. Noticed that game 1. Game 3, I noticed she had like a red slash painted across her face. Did you see that?
I did.
I I wish I would have found out what was going on, and if I had a little better rapport with the Maryland SID staff, I might have asked. But Maryland was one of those teams that you had a lot of eye
There's
black,
a lot of yeah. There was a lot going
some
on.
with the crosses, some with the extra stuff, which not my cup of tea, but whatever gets you going. But a red slash painted across your face, what in heaven's name was that?
I don't know. I did see someone though with it looked like the 3 fingers that went like this on both sides of her face. I never wore eye black. I'm not a huge fan of it. I really don't understand why. I mean,
it's supposed to cut down glare from what they say. But
yeah, but some girls, they end up putting glitter on it, and then what happened? That glare, I mean, the glare is gonna be even worse when there's glitter, right?
Yeah, when the sun catches the glitter, I mean,
I don't know. Have you tried it? Have you put glitter on your face before?
No, not intentionally. I mean, there have been occasions in my life where there's just kind of glitter around and it ends up, but I've never worn eye black myself. First off, I've never put glitter on myself intentionally. Second off,
where's this conversation going?
I've never put it on my face, put both of them on my face, trying to achieve both intimidation and a stylish look on the ball field. Not quite my deal. As stylish as I gets, the old throwback Nebraska hat that I wear and the classic jackets they came out with this year with the Husker red with this white script Nebraska on it. I'm an old school guy, I'm not a big glitter guy. Okay, what do you want from me?
All right. Let's get back to our.
Let's get back on the base paths. Let's get back behind the plate, right? And we're getting ready to see the Nebraska softball team take on the Indiana Hoosiers. IU has had a terrific year this year. They saw their lengthy winning streak end this week, but still a very good season for the Hoosiers to this point. And we're happy to have Shonda Stanton, their head coach of the last few years, joining us. And Coach Stanton, first off, thank you for joining us. And anytime you can put away about 24 straight wins, you have to feel pretty good about your team. What are your feelings about this season so far from your bunch?
Well, super impressed with what we've done on the offensive side of the ball. And like you said, when you can rattle off 23 straight wins, I've been coaching 25 years and I haven't been a part of a team that's been able to do that. And so kudos to our group. I felt in those stretches, our pitchers have elevated. But I think one of the other difference makers was we played clean defense. And, we went up to Minnesota this past weekend, and that was the one area that slipped. I felt both teams hit the ball well. We didn't make enough plays defensively. But super proud of our group. 23 straight wins. Got to love that. Got some money in the bank. And now that's a tough stretch. We're going to grind these next 2 weeks. We got two midweek games. We play Nebraska. We're at Michigan. A good grinder of a stretch right now.
And with your explosive offense, freshman Taryn Kern, oh my goodness. I would say she's running away with the conference freshman of the year, maybe potentially player of the year. She's setting program records, oh my goodness. What can you say about her?
Special talent. And when you watch her hit, she is so mature. She looks like a veteran in the box. She can take pitches. She can get to 2 strikes and still do damage. She'll do damage on a full count, whereas a lot of athletes are looking only for the walk, and she won't chase. And so she's got a keen eye. She's super disciplined. She knows how to attack a plan, and she's a rat. She works. She gets after it. So, you talk about a kid that has made a tremendous impact on both sides of the ball. She obviously had that viral moment at Purdue, but she makes catches, phenomenal catches going back, into a shallow center. I can't be any more pleased with what we're seeing out of her. Her OPS is off the charts. I mean, you talk power and a great eye makes for a super combination. Love what I'm seeing out of her.
Obviously, anytime you recruit a player, you're hopeful that she can make an immediate impact for you. And I'm sure you had in the back of your head that she could really help you out. But did you see this level of a freshman year from her to where there's legitimate discussion about her being the Big Ten player of the year?
Well, initially we don't make projections like that per se. But she was one kid that we told her from day one, with a group that a lot of positions were up for grabs, that she was penciled in or penned in for the 60 game starts. Like, we knew she'd be our starter at second base. We knew and I told her, you got to be comfortable to hit anywhere from 2 to 8 in our lineup. And so, we started off the beginning of the year. She was a little bit further down the lineup, and she just kept moving up. And it doesn't matter where we've had her. She has flat out performed. And I think what's helped as of late is she's got hitters in front of her and she's got hitters behind her. And you can't say enough about what Taylor Minnick's doing behind her, because if she's not hitting behind her, then Taryn isn't going to get any good pitches. And so, I tell you, we knew she was a special talent, but, for us, I guess we don't project that early. And now it's exciting talking to her about what All-American numbers look like, talking to her about, RBIs and driving in runs and, how you can help this program. And so, it's a joy to just sit back and watch her do her thing. Hitters hit. And, when you're in the third base box, that is super fun to just be relaxed and watch them do their thing.
When you look at someone like that, she's not just leading the conference in home runs, but she's leading the NCAA and Division I. I mean, you look at some of the other names that she's competing against at the top of the ranks. Even for RBIs, she's ranked number 4, and she's above, I think, Kiki Malloy and like all of these names, right? That at the beginning of the year were our player of the year predictions for the NCAA. And I mean, is that a possibility? Do you think? Like, is she gonna squeak her name up into these talks for maybe the NCAA's freshman of the year? Or
you bet. I mean, her one word is limitless, and there are no limits there. When it comes to the power numbers, and look at her walks and hit by pitches. So again, it's not like she's just up there getting greedy. She's taking what she gets, and there'll be moments where I think there was a game early on where at 3-1 there was a pretty decent pitch that she could have attacked, and she took it and didn't get greedy. And then on the full count, she drove the ball to the yard. And that's where I'm saying, like, to, every pitch for her, it's just a pitch. And she knows exactly her plan and what to hunt and what she's looking for. And she executes that plan extremely well. And she does the work, whether it's getting in here, late at night and, I'll be coming back to grab something and she's in here hitting. The kid works. And, I just, the tone that she's setting as a freshman is going to pay dividends for our entire team for many years to come.
Chatting with Shonda Stanton, the head coach of the Indiana Hoosiers. IU comes into the week at 30-11 overall, 9-2 in the league. And one more question, not just about Taryn, but really the impact she can have on your program. When you have a player put up the numbers that Taryn's doing as a freshman, what impact does that have first on the rest of the players in the lineup with her? And then second off, as you try and find another one like her, or at least somewhat like her. I know 433 with 17 home runs. You've got to look pretty hard to find somebody like that. But how does that help you moving forward to try and attract more in that neighborhood?
Well, she elevates everybody around her, and she's making everybody take notice of the Hoosiers. And, she's been a key, component of what we're doing. And so, and when you look up and down our lineup, we are just, littered with freshmen and sophomores that are performing at a really high level. And so, she's going to help attract greatness. And so I'm excited about that, and I just want her to continue to shine. Because I think there's no greater joy as a coach, obviously watching them grow as women and equipping and empowering them is awesome, and then for them to be able to go between the white lines and own their moment and own their stage. It's just, I got the best job in the world, right? I get to go out there and do that every day. And so it's lights, camera, action when it's game time, that's their time. And so to be able to watch Taryn do her thing. And then what's even more exciting, her whole family, they just support her so well. So watch them traveling all over the country and to watch her play, even her brother and sister got to come and see the record-breaking 17th home run. We had a chance for her to call Michelle Venturillo when she tied the record. And so be able to have that engagement from an alumni, it's exciting. She's elevating our program and we're super proud of her.
Another aspect of, I think, your philosophy of playing, and we saw it when you were the head coach at Marshall, but you like to run. And when you look at when it comes to stolen bases in the conference, you guys are on another level. So where does that philosophy come from? And are you looking for certain things? Are you telling do your players just have a green light? How does that all work?
Well, it's funny. I just said to one of my staff members yesterday, this may be the first year we don't get to 100 stolen bases in the last almost 20 years. And that's because we're hitting the ball so well. We don't need to take those chances. And so, the whole philosophy is a lion mode mentality where nobody's going to give you anything. You got to take what you want. And so that's our approach. And, there's over 20 ways to score from third base. So it's all predicated on you have to get to third base. And so how do you get there? You go first to third. Your dirt bags. So any dirt ball read, you're taking it. Any bobble in the outfield, you're taking the next 60 feet. And so, yes, there are things that we teach and that we train, and then we get into the game, we trust it. Some have the green light, particularly on, change ups or balls in the dirt. A lot of it is, just where's the shortstop position? Clearly we know the numbers, what are your times, as the runner, what's the speed of the pitch getting to the plate? What's the pop time? So sure, the normal mathematical equation goes into play, but there's so much more to that. How the middles, how do they move through the zone? Can you steal off the pitcher? What's the catcher doing? Are you stealing off of her when she lobs it back to the pitcher? So it's such a fun game. And when you look, I think we got a tremendous combination of speed and power up and down the lineup. And so this has been one of the most exciting teams I've had the privilege of coaching. But that's a game, that we'll always do, whether we have speed or not in the lineup. We're still going to put pressure. We're still going to run. And I think, we're over 80 stolen bases, and we've got more power than we've ever had. And that's an exciting place to be as a coach.
I was just going to ask you about that, and we're chatting with Shonda Stanton, the head coach of the Indiana Hoosiers, and 86 stolen bases coming into the year, but 57 home runs. And you mentioned not having to take the chances on the base paths that you normally have to because you have so much power. How much of an adjustment has that been for you and your team to understand or to maybe tap the brakes a little bit on the aggressiveness on the base paths that's marked your program?
Well, the biggest adjustment is on the first and thirds. Whenever I teach on base running at conferences, I'm like, run something. You never stay. Well, I'm leaning into a runner at third, almost once a game saying, hey, we're not going to run here because if we run, they're going to pitch around her. And so, unless they start pitching around her or we notice just something's open, it will take it. But a lot of times we're staying so they pitch to the hitter. And that's been the biggest adjustment. But I think our athletes are starting to understand that. And they're okay with it. And I think the key is to keep the pressure on everywhere else. We may not just take the straight steal, but if they give you something else, let's go ahead and grab it. Like I mentioned, whether it's a dirt ball read, whether it's the bobble, whether it's not being lined up on a relay, there's certain things that they know to look for and that we look for as a program. And we're going to continue to be all gas, but we're also going to, have power in the tank too.
What did you see in your team? Let's go back beginning of the season, right? Clearwater was a rough tournament for you guys.
Yeah.
So at what point did you see kind of the switch flip to where you went on that run? What was it that really sparked this team?
Well, I think it's one game after the next, and you start logging. All of a sudden, you look up, and you've now won 9 straight, 10 straight, and the confidence builds. But I think really it was the Maryland series. I think that was the weekend where we were still up and down a little bit, and they come in and we sweep that series at home. I think that was a shot in the arm for our athletes, and then we go on the road and we sweep a Purdue series when we were down in both games. And I think the one game we were down 5-1. And then we have Ohio State at home and we sweep that series. So now you're looking up and you're 8-0 in the Big Ten. So winning definitely helps that. But, I think one of the things that we told our team, whether it was when we were 0-5 in Clearwater or got out to a slow start, we told them some things. We told them in that preseason, it was built for 20 wins. We ended preseason with 19 wins. I didn't think we would go ahead and start, Big Ten play 8-0. But, we've kind of told them some things about how the schedule is built. And I think when you believe something, your behaviors precede that, right? And so if you believe we're a great hitting team, you're going to go up there and swing free. If you believe there's a hitter behind you, you're not going to take these hacks that put all the pressure or be tentative at the plate. And so I think that's the biggest thing, is just talking to her. What do you believe about this program? Talking to them about RPI. Do you believe, this group can get Indiana back to postseason and be on the national map? If you believe that, then your behavior is going to be different. And I tell you, I know their behavior is different because Monday was our off day yesterday. And I'm in here in the office, and this place, there's rats all over this place. And that wasn't the case maybe a month ago, and so whatever you start to believe, your behavior then backs that up. And so that's when I started to see a difference, is how we're acting. They get it. They know what's on the line now. I think RPI is sitting at 30. They know this is a grind of a stretch here. But we don't have to be perfect over this next stretch. And, I think the biggest thing is don't fall into that trap where, they won 23 straight. Now they've lost 2 in a row. It doesn't matter. Like, it's all going to shake out over these next couple weeks. We know what number we're probably going to get to. And we just got to go out there and be free and relax and enjoy the game.
Looking at your pitching staff, Brianna Copeland has driven you in the circle, 14-0, 2.83 ERA to this entering this week. What stands out about what she's been able to do this year?
Well, you got to look at her in a uniform. She is built different. She's an athlete. She is one of the better two-way players around. She's a power pitcher, closing in on 70. She's high 60s, 70. She hits the ball a ton. And then she steals bases too. She's really probably our best base stealer right now. And so she does it all. And then when she's not on the mound, she's playing third base. And so for us, we got to be smart too, to make sure we're taking care of her and she's taking care of her body and those types of things. But she is fun to watch. There's nothing more fun than watching her round third and sliding in, Superman sliding into home. She is a tremendous athlete. And when my assistant coaches had seen her play, she had come up to a camp. I hadn't seen her play yet. And we were doing a base running station that has agilities. And one of them, they were doing push-ups. And I saw her do push-ups. And I'm like, I don't even need to see her do anything else. I've never had a pitcher like that was such an athlete. I'm like, I'm good. Then she gets on the mound and she's popping 68, 69. I'm like, okay, what else can this kid do? And she's got a smile that lights up a room. It's fun to watch that kid compete.
Well, Coach Stanton, should be a terrific series this weekend between Nebraska and Indiana. We thank you for making some time today, and we'll see you out in Bloomington this weekend.
Thank you for having me on. Go IU. Take care.
You betcha. Coach Shonda Stanton, and I mean, what an embarrassment of riches.
Wow.
Especially on the offensive side of things, where they lead the Big Ten in home runs and they lead the Big Ten in stolen bases. I'm not sure I've seen that.
Yeah, you have to go back and look at Coach Stanton's history, right? Because at Marshall, she kind of had that there. But Morgan Zirkle was one of her stars at Marshall. She was a stolen base machine, and she could also, hit home runs when she wanted to. But yeah, it's just her philosophy. I enjoyed really listening to her talk about that philosophy, and because it's just so different. And when you have players up and down your lineup like Indiana does, like looking at Copeland. Yeah, she is one of their best base stealers. She is one of the
stolen bases.
She is one of their best hitters. And oh, by the way, she has not lost a game in the circle.
Yeah. You're getting a pretty good year out of somebody when they're among your top base stealers, they're among your top hitters, and they haven't lost a game pitching for you. And Indiana has a lot going on, especially from the offensive standpoint, averaging over 7 runs a game. That's going to win you a lot of games. And that is predicated on that aggressive mindset offensively, the way they run the bases, the amount of pressure they put on people, once they get a runner on base. And so it becomes so important for a pitcher to work from ahead. You can't walk people because it's going to be a double in effect very quickly. And maybe that's what set up their power hitting. Obviously, they have good hitters, don't get me wrong. But it also sets up your power hitting when the other team knows you're going to run. So that's more fastballs. That's more easy pitches for your hitters to handle, and one feeds the other.
I like to call it controlled chaos
Mm-hmm.
because you're as the coach, you're in control of what your players are doing, right? You know they're going to run, but what is that batter going to do behind,
Mm-hmm.
right? Are you going to bunt? Are you going to do a hit and run, or are you
Sure.
going to hit a home run? I mean, it keeps the pitch caller in the other dugout on their toes. And I think coming up this weekend, this is probably the biggest test for this Nebraska pitching staff
Mm-hmm.
they're going to have this year, because you can't there's no batter that you can take off.
Right. I mean, it's up there with UCLA and Oklahoma State. As far as the quality of lineup, the one hole that I see with Indiana is a lack of pitching depth, because
Yes.
Copeland's 4-0, 2.83 ERA coming in. But then after that, there's a pretty big drop. Heather Johnson, an ERA of 4, is their number 2 pitcher. Macy Montgomery's their number 3 pitcher, 4.20 ERA. So this is an Indiana team that gives up some runs.
Yeah.
And if you stay mentally in the game and don't get discouraged when they steal a couple bases on you or you give up a home run, there's an opportunity for you when you get the bat back in your hand.
And as a team, Indiana leads the league in batting, and they're 12th of 14 in pitching.
Mm-hmm.
So knowing that as a hitter, and that you've got to produce runs to win the ball game.
Right. Yeah, there's pressure on you when you step to the plate against this Indiana team, even though the pitching staff really hasn't distinguished themselves to this point. All right, speaking of distinguishing themselves, the Big Ten power rankings. Let's take a look at how we stack up this conference. It feels like we shuffle it a little bit every week, other than the top spot. And so, Maren, let's go with your top 3, if you would.
Yeah, but first I want to say there are 2 things we know for sure.
Uh-huh.
We know Northwestern is number 1.
Yep.
And we know Michigan State is number 14.
Right.
I think that'll stay that way all year.
Mm-hmm.
In between, total crapshoot.
Oh, yeah. Shuffle the deck every week.
All right. So 1, Northwestern. 2, Indiana. 3, Nebraska.
And I agree. Northwestern goes out and sweeps Penn State at home. The 24-6 whooping the Wildcats put on Penn State on Saturday. I remember one of us on this podcast talking about how good the Penn State pitching staff was going to be. I forget which one, but
I wonder who that could be.
Anyway,
I think he's sitting next to me.
I think it's a he. Yeah. Yeah.
Oh,
our producer Cam
was
real high on the Nittany Lang pitching staff. To put in perspective what Northwestern's softball team did on Saturday. So the team that plays directly adjacent to Sharon J. Drysdale Field, the Northwestern Wildcat football team, and not a great year for the Cats this past year. Though they beat Nebraska in the season opener. Anyhow,
that was in Ireland, wasn't it?
It was. I wish it would have stayed over there. But at any rate, so Northwestern softball tallies 24 runs in 4 innings. Northwestern football, 12 games, only 3 times scored 24 points. And I don't know if you know this, Maren. I presume you're a pretty big sports fan.
Yeah.
Not to insult your intelligence, but I don't want to. I don't want to assume. You get 6 points when you score a touchdown in football.
Uh-huh.
So 3 touchdowns,
right?
3 extra points, and a field goal.
Yeah.
You got to score runs one by one in softball. And Northwestern football could only muster 24 points 3 times. Northwestern softball hung 24 runs in 4 innings.
Yeah.
I mean, that's incredible. But at any rate, of course, Northwestern remains number 1. Indiana, number 2. Yes, they lose the series at Minnesota. I'm not troubled by that. Minnesota's a good team. It's played well lately. I do think it's kind of a readjustment for how we look at Indiana. But we'll get a good sense of it, I think, this week against Nebraska. And then Huskers 3rd. I mean, they go out to Maryland. They win that series. They pitch very well. I'll put the Huskers 3rd, and maybe that's buying in a little too quickly. But if Nebraska gets the pitching from Harness and Wallace that they got this last week, they're going to be fine. They're going to be really good. So I'll put the Huskers at 3 and buy into hopefully the rising stock of this pitching staff.
Yeah, I think that the top 3, I think we're pretty solid.
Sure. All right. I think the next 4 is where we get crazy, though.
Yeah, this is where it hits the fan.
That's about right.
So Minnesota, Iowa, Wisconsin, Ohio State. I don't know.
Yeah.
It's like I had Maryland up in here for so long, and they just kind of fell off the table. I mean, it's hard to see Maryland in this top half right now, but
right.
And then we had Michigan up here, and then Michigan goes and loses to Illinois. I don't know.
Yeah.
This is where it just gets crazy.
Maybe my recency bias is getting to me, but I'm going to keep Michigan at 4. Yeah, they dropped the game to Illinois this last week in Ann Arbor, but I think they're pitching it much better. The offense is good enough. The offense is not great. I don't think the offense is going to be great for them this year. But that, from a pitching standpoint, that'll keep them in a lot of games. I've got Wisconsin 5, and this feels a bit low. They go out to Purdue and they sweep them. Wisconsin's had a favorable beginning draw in Big Ten play. Michigan State, Illinois, Purdue. That changes this week because they have Northwestern at home. They've got the doubleheader with Minnesota, then at Nebraska, at Maryland, and with Iowa. So I've been a little reluctant to buy into Wisconsin because I think they've played a fairly easy Big Ten schedule to this point. But they get the chance to prove me wrong in the next couple of weeks. Ohio State 6, and I just don't know what to do with the Buckeyes. I feel like they're a top half of the Big Ten, but they don't just grab me by the throat and say, you know what, we deserve upper echelon consideration. It just feels like they tread water. That program stays about top half, middle 4, this range, 4 through 7 in the Big Ten. Go into regionals, but not a conference championship contender. It feels like they're there virtually every year. Then I've got, believe it or not, your Iowa Hawkeyes at 7.
Look at that. Look at that. Here they come.
Yep. The pitching staff made me a believer. They go out to Michigan State. Yes, they do what you expect them to do. They sweep the Spartans. They've got Maryland at home this week, but I like their pitching staff. The offense is what it is, but pitching staff's really good. There's not enough runway, I don't think, to get them into regionals, but they're putting together a very nice year out there.
Yeah. The only way Iowa makes regionals is if they go out and win the tournament. If they win the conference tournament. That at this point in the season, their RPI is a little low, and while they are putting together a nice record overall, that's the only way they'll get in.
Right. Okay, so we've covered the top half. Take us through the next 4, if you would.
All right. I dropped Maryland into this area. Maryland, Michigan, Rutgers, Illinois. I dropped Michigan down in this area because while they did win the series against Illinois, it wasn't by much.
No, 2-1 run wins, yes.
It wasn't by much. 2 run one. Say that 5 times fast.
Ha! 1 run. Unique New York. I just blew it. Unique New York. Unique New York. The arsonist had oddly shaped feet, etc. Go ahead.
And one of them was in extra innings. So
yeah,
it just didn't feel like a performance that they had against Nebraska.
Mm-hmm.
And the hot and cold, it's like, okay, well, where do you fit in this set of power rankings for this week? And this is where I landed them.
Okay, well, that's fair. Okay, so you got Michigan in this bottom half along with Maryland, and after that,
I mean, Rutgers is down here too.
Yeah, they're another one that I can't quite figure out. So my next three, I've got Minnesota at 8, and that feels low.
Interesting.
Yeah, that feels low. I'm waiting to buy in on them. Maybe to my discredit, because they beat Indiana in the series. They're at Michigan State this week. Then they get the doubleheader against Wisconsin next midweek. So, this feels low for Minnesota. I have trouble boosting them over Iowa, which just went out and won its series. I have trouble hopping them over Ohio State, who I think's a good team. And then from there, Wisconsin, Michigan, etc. So Minnesota 8, Maryland down to 9, and it's not just losing the Nebraska series, but it's also getting swept up at Rutgers. And not to rip on Rutgers, but that, if you are Maryland sitting there thinking we're a regional team, you go up to Rutgers and you win at least one.
Yeah.
And they were not able to do that. I've got Rutgers at 10, and I just feel I'm waiting to buy into them. I'm reluctant to buy into them due to their very easy non-conference schedule. They lose the series to Ohio State, so if I was inclined to buy into them, it wasn't going to happen after this week. They have Indiana in 2 weeks, so they get Indiana after the Huskers. And maybe at that point, that's kind of where the rubber meets the road on them. They've had a fairly manageable draw in the Big Ten. Illinois, Purdue, Maryland, at Ohio State, at Penn State, Indiana, at Iowa, and then they end with the rough matchup against Northwestern. But especially early on, they've had a chance to build some confidence and belief. And I don't know that it's going to pay off this year, but I think in the coming years, it'll help out for Rutgers. But for right now, I've got them at 10.
Yeah, kind of a similar situation to Iowa. The RPI is way too low. So Rutgers is bottom 3 in the conference in RPI. And even though they have a good record, they have a decent,
they're okay.
They're decent schedule, whatever.
Right.
But 72 RPI, they don't get in.
No.
They're not even on the bubble.
No. And
unless
I don't know that they could play their way on.
No, I don't think so either.
And so they have to win the Big Ten tournament.
Exactly.
Now, the good news for them is they're currently sitting in 4th. They're tied for 4th with Nebraska and Iowa coming into this week. Top 4 get buys. And so that makes your path 1 game shorter to try and win a Big Ten tournament championship. And as we said, the schedule is going to be pretty manageable to where maybe they get that bye, maybe they don't. But they'll at least be in the running for it, and they'll have some confidence, and that opens the door for them to perhaps make a run at the Big Ten tournament at the end of the year. All right, round out your power rankings, if you would.
All right. Illinois, Penn State, Purdue, and Sparty.
Oh, Sparty. My four teams are the same. The order is a little skewed. Illinois 11. They were competitive with Michigan, but I think it's safe to label the season a disappointment for the Illini. Purdue at 12. They get swept at Wisconsin, or home against Wisconsin. tough series, but I just don't see that thing turning around for them. And then the next 2 weeks for them are pretty tough with Michigan and Ohio State. Penn State 13, totally sold my stock on them. You go up to, I obviously you don't expect them to go up and win that series against Northwestern, but man, 24 runs, come on. And then MSU 14th per usual. So that's kind of how things look right now. And as we say, the middle class, the middle of this conference continues to shuffle every week. And I think this is going to be a really compelling final month of the year. Like we say, I don't know that anybody runs down Northwestern, but trying to play your way into a first round bye in the Big Ten tournament, that's a pretty big goal and a pretty important thing for a team like Nebraska, like Indiana, like Wisconsin, like Rutgers.
Yeah. I think the conversation now that we know Northwestern is most likely going to lock up a 1 seed is Northwestern good enough to host and get a national seed?
Right.
As of right now, I was trying to do my own version of bracketology the other day, which is maybe for another conversation. But
your own difficulty. Yeah.
But I do feel like Northwestern is going to host maybe at a 15 or 16 seed.
Right. Yeah, they're not hosting supers.
No.
But they are going to host a regional, I would think. There's not enough runway on the RPI, although they go, you look at their stretch coming up at Wisconsin, at Michigan, Nebraska. I mean, that's a good 3-week stretch where if they're able to win some games, I mean, not to say they can play themselves into super regional talk, but maybe you can get into that 9 to 12 range, 10, 11, 12, because beyond, trying to play yourself into supers, that's not going to happen.
No.
There's not enough room. But you want to create the most favorable path you can to get yourself to Oklahoma City. And that, I think that's the opportunity ahead for Northwestern. So storylines to track, another interesting week of Big Ten softball and Nebraska softball coming up. And next week we will chat all about it here on Behind the Plate with Maren and Nate. Our thanks to Indiana's head coach, Shonda Stanton, for joining us this week. But most of all, our thanks to you for listening along with us to Behind the Plate with Maren and Nate. We'll talk to you next week.